Hello and welcome to Lost Love Chronicles.
William Foster sat hunched over a mountain of papers in his cramped Riverside Community College office, the clock blinking 6:45 p.m. Another long night. His coffee had long gone cold, but he barely noticed. The stacks of books and the musty smell of old paper, once comforting, now did nothing to calm the growing unease inside him. The buzz of his phone broke his thoughts. Another message from Rosalie. Working late. Don't wait up. Will picked up his phone, his thumbs hovering over the screen. After a moment, he typed, "Everything okay?" 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then reappeared. Finally, her reply came. Busy with the Roberts account. Need to focus. He set the phone down slowly, exhaling deeply. This was the 4th night that week Rosalie had stayed late at the real estate office. Her excuses were starting to feel thin, like a shirt worn one too many times. A voice interrupted his thoughts. "Hey, Professor Foster," a student called from the doorway. The janitor said they're locking up soon. Will nodded, gathering his papers. "Thanks, Samantha. Have a good evening." Outside, the heavy summer heat still clung to the air despite the late hour. As he headed to his car, his phone buzzed again this time. A message from Liam, his childhood best friend and now his closest confidant. "Hey brother, got some extra work at the site tomorrow if you're interested. Could use another pair of hands." Will smiled. The construction work had become his refuge lately, a world of simple tasks and tangible results. He texted back, "Count me in. Same time. You know it. Bring your work boots, and that mean right hook of yours." The drive home took him past Rosalie's office. Her car was still parked outside, but the building was mostly dark, save for a single light on the 3rd floor. He kept driving. At home, his daughter Carla, 16 years old and fiercely smart, sat at the kitchen counter surrounded by a fortress of textbooks. Her face lit up when he walked in. "Dad, I was hoping you'd be home for dinner." "Wouldn't miss it, kiddo," William said, dropping his briefcase and joining her. "What's got you stuck tonight?" "AP History," she groaned. "We're doing the French Revolution, and I can't keep all these political factions straight." Will pulled up a chair, slipping easily into teacher mode. "All right," he said. "Let's break it down. Start with the main players." They spent the next hour poring over historical alliances and betrayals, sharing leftover lasagna and laughter. Watching Carla's quick mind at work, pride briefly pushed aside Will's gnawing unease. She had inherited his love of history and her mother's sharp wit. Still, he found himself hoping more and more that she'd taken after him rather than Rosalie. "Mom working late again?" Carla asked, trying to sound casual. "Big account," Will replied neutrally. "How about we watch that documentary you mentioned?" Later that night, Will sat alone in his study, an untouched glass of bourbon at his side. He opened his laptop and pulled up his banking app. The numbers stared back at him perfectly ordinary, yet something about them felt off. Lately, Will had been monitoring their accounts more closely, a habit born more from growing suspicion than any real financial concern. At 11:42 p.m., the front door creaked open. Will stayed seated in his study, listening to Rosalie's movements. The click of heels across the tile, the clatter of keys into the ceramic bowl by the door, the soft hiss of the refrigerator door opening and closing. Her footsteps approached his study. He didn't look up when she appeared in the doorway. "You're still up," she said, her voice carrying a faint edge surprise laced with something else. "Irritation, maybe. Grading papers," Will replied, though the screen in front of him displayed bank statements, not essays. Rosalie lingered, her silhouette framed uncertainly in the doorway. "The Roberts account is proving complicated," she said, "but the commission will be worth it." Will finally met her eyes. Her makeup was still flawless, not a smudge out of place despite the late hour. Her blouse looked crisp, freshly pressed as if she were beginning her day, not ending it. "Complicated how?" he asked, his voice even. Rosalie's hand moved to her neck, an old tell from high school. A subtle move she always made right before lying. "Just some paperwork issues," she said quickly. "Nothing exciting." She forced a bright smile. "I'm exhausted. Coming to bed in a bit?" She hesitated, then disappeared down the hall. Will waited until he heard her footsteps fade before turning back to his laptop. He methodically clicked through their joint bank accounts, credit card statements, mortgage payments. Everything appeared normal at first glance. But Will hadn't spent 2 decades teaching history without learning how to read between the lines, how small inconsistencies often hinted at much bigger truths. His phone buzzed. A text from Liam. 6 a.m. sharp, brother. Bring your A game. Will sent back a thumbs up emoji, closed the laptop, and made a silent decision. Tomorrow, he would visit the bank during his lunch break. Something wasn't adding up, and Will Foster had never been one to ignore his instincts. The next morning, Will was up before dawn. His routine remained unchanged, even as tension simmered beneath the surface. Coffee brewed at exactly 6:15 a.m. The same brand he'd been drinking for years. He packed his lunch, scribbled a quick note for Carla about dinner, and headed out to meet Liam at the construction site. The physical labor helped clear his head. Liam put him to work hauling lumber and checking measurements, tasks that required focus but still allowed for conversation. "How's Rosalie?" Liam asked during their break, avoiding Will's eyes. "Busy with work," Will replied, watching him carefully. "You've seen her around town?" Liam shrugged, pretending to be absorbed in his sandwich. "Here and there. You know how it is in a small town." Will did know. And he knew, too, when his oldest friend was hiding something. The rest of the day blurred by in a haze of sweat and concrete dust. Just as Will was wrapping up, his phone rang, an unfamiliar number flashing across the screen. "Is this William Foster?" The caller asked. "Speaking. Mr. Foster, my name is Thomas Bennett. I believe we need to discuss an urgent financial matter. Would you be available to meet tomorrow morning?" Will's instincts, already on edge, screamed louder. "What is this regarding?" he asked. "A loan agreement bearing your signature," Bennett replied. "I think it's best we go over the details in person. Shall we say 9 a.m. at your office?" Will agreed, his mind already racing through grim possibilities. That night, when Rosalie casually announced yet another late meeting, he didn't argue. Instead, he spent the evening holed up in his study, digging through old bank statements and credit reports, steeling himself for whatever tomorrow might bring. The Thomas Bennett who strolled into Will's office the next morning wore success like a second skin. Tailored suit, manicured nails, shoes that probably cost more than Will's monthly salary. But there was something beneath the polish, a predatory gleam in his smile, that made Will's skin crawl. "Mr. Foster," Bennett said, setting a folder down on the desk. "I have here a loan agreement for $500,000, co-signed by you 3 months ago. Payment is due in 30 days. Will didn't reach for the folder. "I haven't signed any loan agreements." Bennett's smile didn't falter. "Your signature suggests otherwise." He opened the folder and slid a document across the desk. Will studied the paper carefully. At first glance, the signature could have passed as close enough to fool anyone who didn't know better. But Will knew the subtle leftward tilt of his handwriting, the particular way he crossed his T's. This wasn't his work. It was good, but it wasn't his. "This is a forgery," Will said flatly. Bennett's expression didn't change, but his eyes hardened. "That's a serious accusation, Mr. Foster. One that could have unpleasant consequences." His tone remained cordial, almost cheerful, but the threat was unmistakable. 30 days, Mr. Foster. I'm sure a man of your intelligence understands the importance of deadlines." After Bennett left, Will sat there, fury rising in his chest. Someone had forged his signature, framed him, and deep down, he already had a sickening idea of who was behind it. That evening, he drove to Rosalie's office. This time, he didn't go in. He parked across the street and waited. At 8:45 p.m., she emerged, arms full of files, phone pressed to her ear. Will watched as she loaded everything into her car and then drove off, not toward home, but in the opposite direction. He followed at a discreet distance. 15 minutes later, she pulled into the lot of the Riverside Inn, a modest hotel on the town's outskirts. Will parked across the street, keeping out of sight, and watched as she grabbed her briefcase and disappeared inside. His phone buzzed. Liam again. "Still on for tomorrow morning?" Will stared at the screen, then back at the hotel entrance where Rosalie had vanished. 20 years of marriage. 20 years of trust. And now it all felt terrifyingly fragile. Something came up, he typed back. "Rain check." The next few days blurred into a haze of investigation and unraveling secrets. Will pulled records from banks, traced financial movements, pieced together a horrifying picture, large sums transferred between accounts, falsified documents, a network of lies that had been spun over months, maybe years. He hired Patty Lopez, a lawyer a colleague had recommended. One look at the loan agreement, and her brow furrowed. "This is sophisticated," she said, running a finger along the forged signature. "Someone knew exactly what they were doing. But if we can prove it's a forgery." Before she could finish, 2 officers arrived, grim-faced, professional, hands hovering near their belts. "William Foster, you're under arrest for fraud and embezzlement." Will rose slowly, mind reeling. Through his office window, he caught a glimpse of the parking lot, Rosalie standing with Thomas Bennett, their heads close together. He watched as Bennett's hand brushed Rosalie's arm in a gesture of easy familiarity, a gesture that told Will everything he needed to know. The officers led him away. Will's thoughts weren't on the charges or the handcuffs digging into his wrists. He was thinking about patterns, about betrayal, about how his wife hadn't even looked surprised when she saw him being led away. Most of all, he was thinking about revenge. The interrogation room at the police station smelled of stale coffee and desperation. Detective Samantha Martinez sat across from Will, her dark eyes cool and professional as she spread photographs and documents across the metal table. "Let's go through this again, Mr. Foster," she said, tapping a finger against a bank statement. $500,000 was transferred from your wife's real estate company to Mr. Bennett's private account. Your signature authorized the transfer. Care to explain that? Will met her gaze without flinching. That's not my signature. Our forensics team disagrees, Martinez said, sliding another document toward him, a detailed signature analysis. They say it's a 98% match. Then your forensics team needs better equipment. Will snapped, his voice hard. I didn't sign anything. Martinez leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. You teach history at Riverside Community College, right? Salary around $65,000 a year. And yet, we found evidence of recent large purchases, a vacation home in the Cayman Islands, a boat, several luxury vehicles, all under your name. Will's jaw clenched. Someone had been busy building a false narrative, and he had a good idea who. I don't own any of those things. The documentation says otherwise. Martinez paused, watching him carefully. Your wife claims you've been under a lot of pressure lately. Talking about early retirement. Big plans. Did my wife mention where she was 2 nights ago? Will asked quietly. The Riverside Inn, maybe? Martinez's expression stayed neutral, but something flickered in her eyes. Mr. Foster, you're facing serious charges, she said coolly. This isn't the time for baseless accusations. Nothing I've said is baseless, detective. But you're right about one thing. Someone's been under pressure. Someone's been planning something. Just not the person you think. The door opened, and Patty Lopez swept into the room, briefcase in hand. This interview is over, she said firmly. My client won't be answering any more questions without me present. After Martinez left, Patty turned to Will. They've built a strong circumstantial case, she said grimly. The signature analysis, the financial records, the purchases, someone covered their tracks well. Rosalie, Will said flatly. She's behind this. That's a serious accusation to level against your wife, Patty said carefully. Do you have proof? Not yet, Will admitted, leaning forward, his voice low and intense. But I will. Patty spread her hands helplessly. Right now, things aren't looking good. The evidence is circumstantial, but it's persuasive. We need something concrete if we're going to prove your innocence. And in the meantime? Will asked. In the meantime, Patty said, you'll be held until your arraignment. I'll push for bail, but with the amount involved. She let the sentence trail off. Will nodded, already working through possibilities in his mind. I need you to do something for me, Patty, he said. Check into Thomas Bennett's background. Something about him doesn't add up. I'll look into it, she promised. Then she hesitated. But we'll be careful. These people, whoever they are, they're organized. They're connected. They've been planning this for a long time. Will smiled, but there was no warmth in it. So have I, he said. They just don't know it yet. The next few days in county jail gave Will plenty of time to think. He observed everything: the guards' routines, the shifting alliances between inmates, the unwritten rules that governed life behind bars. He made no friends, started no conversations. He watched. And he planned. Rosalie visited him on the 3rd day. She wore a conservative black dress, managing to look both concerned and slightly afraid as she sat across from him in the visitor's room. Will, she began, her voice trembling slightly, I don't understand what's happening. The police, they say you've been stealing money, making illegal deals. Will studied her face, the carefully applied makeup, the rehearsed expression of distress. How many times had she practiced this act in front of a mirror? Interesting choice of hotel, he said quietly. The Riverside Inn. Room 412, wasn't it? Rosalie's face paled slightly, but she recovered quickly. What are you talking about? You tell me, Rosalie. Tell me about Thomas Bennett. Tell me about the loan agreement. Tell me everything. You're not making sense, Rosalie said, reaching across the table to take his hand. Will pulled away before she could touch him. Will, please, let me help you. Like you helped set me up? He said softly, his voice dangerous. I trusted you, Rosalie. Remember that. Tears welled up in her eyes right on cue. Will thought coldly. I don't know what's happened to you, she whispered. You're not the man I married. No, Will agreed. I'm not. And you're not the woman I married. The difference is I know exactly what I am. The tears spilled over. Carla needs you home, Rosalie said. She's devastated. Don't, Will said, his voice cutting like a blade. Don't you dare use our daughter against me. A guard approached the table. Time's up. Rosalie stood, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. I'll be back tomorrow. We'll figure this out, Will. I promise. Will watched her leave, noting how her shoulders straightened the moment she thought he couldn't see her anymore. The performance was over, but the real play was just beginning. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for the following week. Will sat silently in the courtroom, listening as the prosecution laid out their case. The evidence was overwhelming. Bank transfers, property purchases, suspicious meetings with known criminals, all carefully documented, all pointing directly at him. Then Liam took the stand. Will's oldest friend refused to meet his eyes as he was sworn in. He looked stiff and uncomfortable in his suit, tugging at his collar as he answered questions about their friendship, their work together, and their conversations. Mr. Braun, the prosecutor began, did the defendant ever discuss his financial situation with you? Liam shifted uneasily in his seat. Yeah, sometimes. He said things were tight, that he was tired of living paycheck to paycheck. Did he ever mention specific plans to acquire money quickly? The prosecutor pressed. Liam's hands twisted in his lap. He mentioned wanting to make some big changes. Said he had plans to get ahead. Could you be more specific about these plans? Objection. Leading the witness, Patty called out. Overruled, the judge said. The witness may answer. Liam swallowed hard. He talked about knowing people who could help him make quick money. Said he was tired of playing by the rules while everyone else was getting rich. Will sat perfectly still, his face expressionless, as each word from Liam landed like a blow, every carefully crafted lie fitting neatly into the prosecution's narrative. And did Mr. Foster discuss any specific amounts? The prosecutor asked. He mentioned needing at least $500,000 to start, Liam said. Said he had a contact who could help him move the money around. Make it look clean. The prosecutor nodded, satisfied. No further questions. During cross-examination, Patty did her best to discredit Liam's testimony, pointing out inconsistencies and emphasizing the lack of concrete evidence. But the damage was already done. We'll watch the faces of the jury. They believed Liam. They believed the story of a desperate man driven to crime by greed. That evening, back in his cell, Will received a visit from his daughter. Carla's eyes were red from crying, but her chin was set with determination. Dad, she said, pressing her hand against the glass partition, I know you didn't do this. Will placed his hand opposite hers. I didn't, sweetheart. Someone set me up. Mom's been acting weird, Carla said, lowering her voice. She's always on the phone, talking quietly. And Uncle Liam. She hesitated. What about Liam? He comes by the house a lot now. When he thinks I'm not around. He and Mom, they talk to each other differently. Not like before. Will's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice calm for his daughter's sake. What do you mean, differently? Like they're sharing a secret. Dad, something's wrong. Really wrong. I know, sweetheart. But I need you to do something for me. I need you to pretend everything is normal. Can you do that? Carla nodded, her eyes showing a maturity beyond her years. What are they going to do to you? She asked. Don't worry about that. I'll handle it. Just remember, whatever happens, whatever you hear, I love you. That's never going to change. After Carla left, Will lay on his bunk, staring at the ceiling. The pieces were starting to come together. Rosalie, Liam, Thomas Bennett. A conspiracy designed to destroy him, to take everything he had. But they had made one crucial mistake. They hadn't factored his daughter into their calculations. The courtroom was packed on the day of sentencing. Will stood before the judge, his back straight, his face expressionless. Behind him, he could feel Rosalie's presence, could practically taste the false concern she projected for the court's benefit. Judge Malcolm Harrison peered down from the bench, reading from the sentencing document. Mr. Foster, you have been found guilty of serious crimes. The evidence presented shows a calculated attempt to defraud and embezzle substantial sums of money. While your previously clean record has been taken into consideration, Will tuned out the judge's voice, focusing instead on the subtle movements behind him. He didn't need to turn around to know Liam was sitting beside Rosalie, offering silent support. His best friend and his wife united in betrayal. Therefore, the judge concluded, it is the judgment of this court that you be sentenced to 3 years in a medium-security correctional facility. The gavel's bang echoed through the courtroom. Will heard Rosalie's perfectly timed gasp of distress, heard the murmurs from the spectators. But his attention was fixed on Patty Lopez, who was already preparing the appeal. We'll fight this, she whispered as he was led away. The evidence is circumstantial. We can cut her off. No appeals, Will said quietly. Save your energy, Patty. There are other battles coming. Processing into prison was a blur of paperwork, fingerprinting, and receiving institutional clothing. Will stayed composed throughout, speaking only when necessary, observing everything. He was assigned to cell block D, a section reserved for nonviolent offenders. On his first night in his permanent cell, Will received a message through the prison's computer system. It was from Carla, marked urgent. His hands were steady as he opened it, but what he read made his blood run cold. Hey Dad, remember your best friend Tom who testified against you? He and Mom just announced they've been secretly married for 6 months, all while you were in prison awaiting trial. They've been planning this since before she hired that hitman to kill you, the one who eventually confessed and cleared your name. We'll read the message 3 times, each word searing itself into his mind. Not Tom Liam. The name had been wrong, but the truth was undeniable. His wife and his best friend had married. The conspiracy ran even deeper than he had imagined. And a hitman, a failed attempt on his life. He sat on his bunk, letting the rage wash over him in heavy, deliberate waves. Each breath brought new clarity, new purpose. They hadn't just tried to ruin his life, they'd tried to end it. And now they believed they had won, believing he was safely contained, left to rot, while they celebrated their stolen victory. Will smiled in the darkness of his cell. If any of his enemies had seen that smile, they would have run. Because it wasn't the smile of a broken man. It wasn't even the smile of an angry man. It was the smile of a man who had just found his true purpose. The next morning, Will began his new routine. Exercise in the yard, meals in the cafeteria, long hours in the prison library. To the guards and other inmates, he appeared to be adapting well, resigned to his fate. But they didn't see him late at night, studying legal texts until his eyes burned, making meticulous notes about prison routines and personnel. They didn't see him watching, learning, planning. Every detail filed away, every weakness memorized. When Rosalie sent a letter expressing her regret at how things had turned out, Will read it carefully. He noted the cautious choice of words, the subtle implications. She was covering her tracks, crafting a paper trail of concern and support. He folded the letter with precise care and added it to his growing archive of evidence. Liam never wrote, never visited. Will hadn't expected him to. The betrayal was complete. The man who had been his best friend since childhood had moved on to claim his prize, Will's wife. Will's life. But they had forgotten something essential about Will Foster. Beneath the quiet exterior, beneath the professor's tweeds and the father's gentle smile, there was steel. They had forgotten that a man who studied history understood the architecture of revenge, the patience it required, the discipline it demanded. Most of all, they had forgotten the most important thing. They hadn't killed him. The metal bars of cell block D clanged shut behind Will Foster. His new home was a cramped 8 by 10-foot cell, furnished with a narrow bunk and a cold stainless steel toilet sink combination. The previous occupant had left behind a few faded pin-ups and some religious pamphlets, which Will immediately tore down. Foster. A guard barked. Yard time in 5. Will nodded, his face expressionless. Prison life followed a simple rhythm. Wake up, eat, exercise, work detail, sleep. Repeat. The simplicity suited him. It gave him time to think, to observe, to plan. In the yard, Will claimed a spot against the fence, silently watching the other inmates. Groups had naturally formed based on unspoken rules. The drug dealers near the basketball court, the white-collar criminals by the weight benches, the violent offenders dominating the center of the yard. Will belonged to none of them. Hey, Professor, a voice called out. Will turned to see a muscular man approaching, his arms covered in prison tattoos. Need some protection? The man said. Will said nothing. The man smirked and stepped closer, flanked by 2 others. Wasn't really asking, he added. A smart guy like you should understand how things work in here. Will's muscles tensed, but his voice stayed calm. Walk away. The man laughed and reached for Will's shoulder. What happened next was fast, efficient, and brutal. Will grabbed the outstretched hand, twisted it backward until tendons popped, and drove his knee hard into the man's solar plexus. As the 2 others rushed him, Will used their momentum against them, sending one face first into the fence and catching the other with a sharp elbow to the throat. Guards rushed in, whistles blowing. Will calmly put his hands up, already assuming the position. As they cuffed him, he noticed the other inmates watching. Good. The message had been sent. 2 weeks in solitary gave Will even more time to think, and he used it well. He worked out in his cell and ran through endless scenarios in his mind. When he finally returned to the general population, things had changed. No one approached him directly anymore. But he saw it in their eyes, quiet respect. That's when he met Matthew Reyes, the failed hitman. Matthew was doing time for a string of petty crimes, but when he first laid eyes on Will, there was a flash of recognition. A different story played out in his expression. Will cornered him in the laundry room during work detail. You know who I am, Will said. Matthew tried to back away, but Will had already positioned himself between Matthew and the door. Look, man, I don't want any trouble, Matthew stammered. Too late, Will replied, his voice soft, almost gentle. You were hired to kill me. Matthew swallowed hard. I didn't go through with it. But you know who hired you, Will said, not a question. They'll kill me if I talk, Matthew whispered. Will smiled, and Matthew instinctively took another step back. They're out there, Will said. I'm in here. With you. Think about that. Over the next few weeks, Will became Matthew's shadow. When other inmates hassled Matthew, Will intervened. When Matthew needed extra food from the commissary, Will made sure he got it. Protection came at a price. Information. Mrs. Foster contacted me through a mutual acquaintance. Matthew finally admitted one afternoon during yard time. Said her husband was becoming unstable. Dangerous. Needed to be dealt with before he hurt someone. She paid you? Will asked. I got half the payment up front. Liam brought it. Said it was insurance money or something. I was supposed to make it look like a robbery gone wrong. Will's hands tightened, but his voice stayed calm. Why didn't you go through with it? I got scared, Matthew mumbled. Something didn't feel right. Then I got picked up for another job and ended up here. You have proof? Will asked, leaning in. Matthew nodded slowly. Kept everything. Insurance, you know. Phone recordings. Text messages. Even photos of the cash handoff. It's all hidden away. Will's voice was a low whisper now. I want it. All of it. Matthew hesitated. What's in it for me? You confess. Clear my name. Give me everything you have, Will said evenly. And I make sure you survive in here. Plus, when I'm done with them, you get a cut. Matthew studied Will's face carefully. You're really going after them? Will's smile was cold. They're already dead, he said. They just don't know it yet. The confession process took time. Will made sure Matthew knew exactly what to say, what evidence to present, and when to reveal it. He also made sure the other inmates understood Matthew was under his personal protection. Meanwhile, Will deepened his routine, spending long hours in the prison library studying law books, financial regulations, and, most importantly, the art of revenge. Will kept a small journal, filling it with notes written in a cipher of his own design, a code based on historical encryption methods. Other inmates began noticing him, his controlled strength, his calm, calculated approach to problems. He wasn't a man who relied on brute force. He was methodical, deliberate, and in prison, that kind of power drew attention. Some began offering their services, recognizing the value of a man with nothing left to lose. Mike Chun, a former hacker doing time for cyber fraud, approached Will one day during lunch. Heard you might need some technical expertise on the outside, Mike said casually. What makes you think that? Will asked, without looking up from his meal. Same way I know your wife's real estate company still uses outdated security protocols, Mike said, grinning. Same way I know your buddy Liam's construction business runs on a network my kid's sister could hack. Will took another slow bite of food. Go on. I've got people on the outside. Good people. They can get into systems, plant evidence, create paper trails, or expose existing ones, Mike offered. Mike's grin widened. Now you're thinking like a criminal. No, Will corrected him. I'm thinking like a man who wants justice. Through Matthew and Mike, Will began quietly building his network. Each new connection was carefully vetted. Each relationship founded on mutual benefit, not trust. He learned document forging techniques from a former art forger, studied close-quarters combat from an ex-military inmate, absorbed every scrap of knowledge about the criminal underworld that came his way. During family visitation days, Carla provided steady updates. She talked about school, about her life, but her eyes said more than her words. She was gathering information, keeping watch on Rosalie and Liam. Mom bought a new house, Carla mentioned during one visit. With Liam, they think I don't know about the meetings they had before everything happened. Will reached across the table, squeezed her hand gently. You're doing good, sweetheart. Keep your eyes open. Keep your mouth shut. When are you getting out? She asked, voice low. Soon, Will promised. And when I do, everything changes. As the months passed, Will's transformation continued. His body hardened from relentless exercise, his mind sharpened by constant study and planning. He kept meticulous records, guard rotations, inmate connections, outside contacts. Every piece of information was a potential weapon. The day Matthew made his official confession, Will watch the chaos unfold from his cell. The media picked it up quickly. Failed hitman confesses. Professor framed by wife and best friend. It didn't free Will immediately. The legal system moved slowly, but it cracked the foundation Rosalie and Liam had so carefully built. More importantly, it gave Will legitimacy. Other inmates, once hesitant to align with him, now saw opportunity. I've got a cousin who works security at major hotels, one inmate offered. He can pull surveillance footage, guest records. Another said, my brother runs a cleaning service. You'd be amazed what rich people say when they think no one's listening. Will accepted every offer. In prison, information was more valuable than gold. He started compiling files, evidence of Rosalie's real estate frauds, Liam's construction kickbacks, and their entire network of lies. Matthew's confession was just the opening move. By the time Will was finished, there would be nowhere left for them to hide. The prison psychiatrist noted in her reports that inmate Foster demonstrated remarkable adaptation to prison life. Calm demeanor, structured routine, apparent acceptance of his situation. What she failed to see, what no report could capture, was the fire burning in his eyes. The meticulous planning behind every seemingly mundane action escaped the prison psychiatrist's notice. What she failed to realize was that while Foster hadn't adapted to prison, he had transformed it into his war room. And each day inside had only brought him closer to launching his campaign. Will's release came on a quiet Tuesday morning. He signed the paperwork with steady hands, collected his few possessions, and walked through the gates without once looking back. The prison had served its purpose. It had given him time, resources, and most importantly, a network of people who owed him favors. Avoiding the main entrance where a crowd of reporters waited, Will slipped out through a service exit, a route one of Mike Chun's associates had arranged. A nondescript sedan sat idling in the lot, ready for him. Mountain View Motel, Will instructed the driver. The room was already booked under the alias James Wilson. The rundown motel, with its faded sign and peeling paint, blended into the landscape, unnoticed by most, exactly what Will needed. Matthew Contacts had set everything up. Cash payments, no questions asked. Inside the room, Will found everything he'd requested: a laptop, several burner phones, and a manila envelope containing $5,000 in cash. It was all he needed for the first phase. The money came from the construction job he'd worked before prison, hidden carefully away from Rosalie's greedy grasp. Will powered up one of the burner phones and began making calls. Each number reached a contact he'd made inside prison. Each conversation was short, coded. The package needs delivery. Standard rate applies. The construction project is greenlit. Send the crew. Legal documents require processing. Timeline, 48 hours. By the end of the day, his network was fully operational. Forged documents started appearing at strategic locations. Anonymous tips triggered regulators to review certain financial transactions. The document specialist Will had trusted with forgery work had created flawless trails of evidence. Later that evening, Ree, one of his primary contacts, reported in. "Your wife's getting nervous," Ree said. "She's hired private security for the house. Liam's drinking more, missing work." Will studied the surveillance photos Ree provided, pinpointing vulnerabilities. "She's skimming money from client escrow accounts to cover their expenses," Ree added. "Liam's cutting corners on materials, bribing inspectors, they're leaving a trail." "And Thomas Bennett?" Will asked. "Still involved, but he's keeping his distance. He knows something's coming." Will nodded, adding detailed notes to his journal. Meanwhile, the IT expert on his team had been busy. They had created multiple fake profiles across various social media platforms, each with a fully fleshed out backstory and years of digital history. "The profiles are ready," Samantha confirmed. "We've established them as legitimate industry insiders. When they start leaking information, people will listen." Will's former combat trainer had also ensured he was prepared for any physical threats. Their sessions had gone far beyond basic fighting skills. Will had learned how to move unseen, how to blend in, how to approach targets without tipping them off. "You're not training for a sport," the trainer reminded him. "You're training to survive and eliminate threats." At night, Will coordinated operations through burner phones and encrypted channels. Each team member had a specific task, and every move was timed for maximum effect. "Start with the small accounts," Will instructed Samantha. "Work your way up to the bigger frauds. Make it look like their own greed is exposing them." Soon, the fake profiles began posting subtle hints about irregularities in local real estate deals. Anonymous comments on industry forums raised quiet alarms about certain transactions. Meanwhile, Will's team planted evidence of money laundering and loan fraud, framing it to appear as if Rosalie's carelessness was unraveling her empire. Liam's construction business faced mounting pressure as well. Building inspectors began receiving anonymous tips about code violations, and suppliers started questioning invoices that didn't match deliveries. Former employees suddenly recalled suspicious activities. "Your friend's cracking," Ray reported. "He's made 3 trips to his lawyer this week." Rosalie's furious with him for drawing attention. Will kept a close watch on their reactions through surveillance feeds. He saw them argue in their driveway, noticed the strain in their expressions at public events. The pressure was mounting, exactly as he had planned. The hidden cameras his team had set up captured their private moments, the accusations, the blame, and the growing fear. Liam drank more heavily, while Rosalie worked increasingly long hours, desperately trying to cover their tracks. "She's getting sloppy," Samantha observed. "Making mistakes. We don't even need to fake it anymore. The fear is making her spiral." Will's network of former inmates, who owed him favors, provided additional pressure. They spread rumors about investigations and informants. The criminal underworld started distancing itself from Rosalie's operations. "Your wife tried to contact Thomas Bennett yesterday," Ree reported. "He wouldn't take her call." Each piece of evidence was carefully crafted and strategically revealed, making sure nothing could be traced back to Will. As far as the world knew, he was still the disgraced former professor trying to rebuild his life. Local news stations picked up stories about questionable real estate deals, while industry blogs speculated about rumors of fraud. Social media buzzed with speculation regarding prominent local businesspeople under investigation. Will watched it all from his motel room command center, coordinating his team's moves and timing each revelation for maximum impact. He had transformed from a victim into an architect of destruction, using the very systems that had betrayed him to dismantle his enemies. His network expanded beyond his initial prison contacts. Samantha introduced him to hackers who could breach secure systems, while Ray's surveillance team provided constant updates on his target's movements. The forger produced documents that would withstand even the closest scrutiny. The foundation is laid, Will told his team. Now, we start pulling the threads that will unravel their world. Will watched as Rosalie and Liam's perfect life began to show cracks. Their expensive house became a prison of paranoia, and their stolen wealth turned into a constant source of fear. Will's revenge wasn't just about punishment. It was about making them feel the same helplessness and betrayal he had endured. Each day brought new pressures, new revelations, and new cracks in their carefully constructed facade. As phase 1 of his plan neared completion, Will reviewed his journal, checking off completed tasks and adjusting timelines. His transformation from wronged husband to ruthless avenger was nearly complete. The tools were in place, the network was active, and the pressure was building. Phase 2 was about to begin, and with it, the real destruction would commence. The contacts Will had made in prison had associates on the outside who specialized in creating untraceable identities. By nightfall, Will had 3 complete sets of identification: driver's licenses, passports, credit cards, all backed by digital records that would withstand any scrutiny. A knock at the door, the specific pattern he'd arranged. Will opened it to find Ray Lynch, the private investigator recommended by his prison contacts. "You Foster?" Ray asked, though both of them knew the answer. Will gestured him inside. "What do you have for me?" Ray pulled out a tablet. "Your ex-wife and her new husband bought a house in Cedar Hills. 5 bedrooms, a pool, private security. They're living large on your misery. Show me everything." For the next 2 hours, Ray walked Will through surveillance photos, financial records, and daily routines. Rosalie and Liam had grown careless in their success, leaving behind trails that Ray's team had easily followed. "She's running bigger scams now," Ree explained, using Liam's construction company to inflate property values, then selling to shell companies they control. The properties get flipped again at higher prices, making their fraud seem legitimate. "We'll study the documentation," Will replied. "And Thomas Bennett's still involved, right?" "Yeah, he's there linked to some heavy hitters in the real estate market. But he's got weaknesses: gambling debts, a taste for expensive women." Will made notes in his journal. "Keep watching them. I want to know everything. Where they eat, who they meet, what time they brush their teeth." After Ree left, Will reached out to Abigail Escobar, a lawyer he'd researched during his time in prison. Known for taking down corrupt attorneys, she was the perfect person for his needs. They met in her office after hours. Abigail was younger than Will expected, but her eyes held the same hardened look he'd seen in the mirror. "Why should I help you?" she asked after he laid out his situation. "Because you hate lawyers who help criminals escape justice," Will replied. "Because Patty Lopez knew what my wife was doing and helped anyway. And because you want to make an example of them." Abigail leaned back in her chair. "You've done your homework." "I had time," Will said. She studied him for a long moment. "What exactly do you want?" "I want them destroyed. Not just punished, destroyed. I want their lives torn apart piece by piece until there's nothing left but ruins." "That's not justice," Abigail said. "That's revenge. In this case, they're the same thing." Abigail smiled. "I have someone you should meet. A former IT specialist who now works freelance. He's particularly good at finding things people want to keep hidden." The IT specialist turned out to be a woman named Samantha Chun, Mike's sister. From her converted garage filled with computers and monitoring equipment, she worked her magic. "Your wife's network security is a joke," Samantha said, fingers flying over keyboards. "Liam's construction company might as well leave their files on the street. How long to get what we need?" "Minutes to gather everything without leaving traces. A few weeks to make it look like they exposed themselves through their own mistakes. That's an art form." "Well, don't rush it," Will warned. "Do it right. I want them to destroy themselves." The next phase required physical preparation. Will found a gym that asked no questions and hired a private combat instructor, another connection from his prison network. The trainer, a former special forces operator, pushed Will beyond his limits. "You're not fighting for points," the trainer growled during one session. "You're fighting to end threats permanently." Will absorbed everything: hand-to-hand combat, weapons training, tactical movement. His body, already hardened from prison workouts, became a weapon itself. Between training sessions, he coordinated with his team. Samantha planted digital breadcrumbs leading to Rosalie's illegal activities. Ray's surveillance documented Liam's meetings with questionable business partners. The forger created documents that would withstand any scrutiny. Every piece was carefully prepared, every component tested and verified. Will's hotel room had become a command center, with walls covered in photos, documents, and connection maps. "Your wife's getting sloppy," Ree reported during one update. "She's skimming more money, taking bigger risks." Success has gone to her head. Liam's drinking more, arguing with her about the exposure risks. He knows they're vulnerable, but can't stop spending the money. Will made another note in his journal. Perfect. The tools of his vengeance were almost ready. Each member of his team had been selected for their expertise and motivations, usually money, but sometimes revenge of their own. None knew the full extent of his plan, only the role they played in it. As Will prepared himself both physically and mentally, he received regular updates from Carla. His daughter had become his eyes within their home, though he carefully shielded her from the details of his scheme. They fight sometimes, she reported during one call. When they think I'm asleep. Liam's scared of something, but Mom just laughs it off. You're doing great, sweetheart. Just remember, you never heard any of this. I know, Dad. I want them to pay for what they did to you. They will. I promise. The final piece came together when Abigail introduced him to her contacts in the media. Reporters eager for stories of corruption and betrayal were ready to run with anything that had solid documentation. We'll have plenty of that, she said. Will stood in his hotel room, surveying the arsenal he had assembled, not weapons of steel and gunpowder, but of information and exposure. Each piece had been chosen with precision, every tool perfectly suited to its task. The time for preparation was nearly over. Soon, he would begin to dismantle the lives of those who had wronged him, piece by piece, until nothing was left of their ill-gotten wealth and false respectability. Will Foster, the quiet history professor, was gone. In his place stood a man who had learned the true meaning of revenge, someone who had turned his prison sentence into a masterclass in destruction. The tools were ready. The weapons primed. The war was about to begin. Will sat in his motel room, surrounded by monitors displaying surveillance footage of Rosalie and Liam's movements. 3 burner phones sat on the desk, each assigned to a different aspect of his operation. The wall behind him was covered with photos, documents, and connection maps, a war room crafted for destruction. Voice crackled through one of the secure lines. The cyber infiltration is complete. We've mapped their entire network. Begin phase 1, Will ordered. Start with the small irregularities. Make them look like careless mistakes. Within hours, subtle discrepancies began to appear in Rosalie's real estate records, transaction dates that didn't align, property values showing unexpected variations. Nothing significant enough to trigger an immediate investigation, but enough to catch the eye of the compliance department. Ray's surveillance team reported increasing tension between the targets. Liam's drinking more, Ray noted during their daily briefing. 3 visits to the bar today alone. Your wife's not happy about it. We watched footage of Liam stumbling from his truck. Rosalie's face was tight with anger as she met him at the door. Good. Keep pushing. What about their business contacts? They're getting nervous. 2 developers pulled out of deals this week. The anonymous tips about building code violations have people asking questions. The IT experts' work proved invaluable. Fake profiles popped up across industry forums, each with years of manufactured history. These personas subtly raise questions about specific real estate transactions, creating whispers that spread through professional networks. Your wife tried to track down the source, Samantha reported. She's searching for leaks in her organization. Fired 2 employees yesterday. Will nodded, making notes in his journal. Perfect. She's creating more enemies. What about the document trail? The forger's work is flawless, Ray replied. Bank transfers, property records, loan agreements, each document tells a piece of their fraud story. Will's team strategically planted the evidence, making it appear as though poorly hidden records of illegal transactions had surfaced. The building inspector received another anonymous tip, and Ray confirmed that Liam's construction site had been shut down for safety violations, costing them contracts. Will monitored their reactions through hidden cameras as Rosalie paced their expensive kitchen, phone pressed to her ear, her voice rising in frustration. Meanwhile, Liam sat in his home office, bottle in hand, staring at financial reports that showed their empire crumbling. Thomas Bennett's getting nervous, Samantha noted. His associates are distancing themselves. The breadcrumbs we planted about money laundering have them spooked. The pressure mounted steadily. Will's combat training proved invaluable as he infiltrated social circles under various disguises, attending charity events and business functions. From behind false identities, he observed their growing paranoia. Your wife's making mistakes, Ree reported. Real ones now, not just our planted clues. She transferred money between accounts without proper documentation, leaving a trail even amateurs could follow. Will's network expanded beyond his initial prison contacts. Former inmates who owed him favors began spreading rumors in criminal circles, while legitimate businesses quietly pulled away from deals with Rosalie and Liam. The local news stations are asking questions, Samantha confirmed. Those industry blog posts about fraudulent deals are gaining traction, and social media is picking up the story. Each piece of evidence was carefully timed and placed, leaving no direct link to Will. To the world, he remained a disgraced professor, keeping his head down while his targets' lives unraveled, thread by thread. Hidden cameras captured their private moments, accusations, blame, and fear. Liam drank heavily, missing crucial meetings. Rosalie worked longer hours, trying to plug the leaks in their sinking ship. She tried reaching Thomas 3 times today, reported. He's not taking her calls anymore. His people say he's reviewing their business relationship. Will coordinated everything from his motel command center. Each team member knew only their part of the plan, none seeing the full scope. He had transformed from a victim to a puppet master, pulling strings that made his enemies dance. The financial pressure intensified, and Rosalie began shifting money between accounts in a desperate attempt to stay afloat. Meanwhile, Liam's construction company faced mounting regulatory scrutiny. Their perfect life was cracking at the seams. They're fighting more, Samantha reported, monitoring their home security feeds. Liam wants to cut losses and run, but your wife refuses to let go. Will watched as they crumbled through his surveillance network. Their once expensive house had become a prison of paranoia, their stolen wealth turning toxic. Each day brought new pressures, revelations, and cracks in their facade. His revenge was no longer just about punishment, it was about making them feel the same helplessness, betrayal, and slow, crushing weight of destruction he had felt. As Phase 1 neared completion, Will reviewed his journal. Every step had been executed flawlessly. His transformation from wronged husband to architect of destruction was nearly complete. Your wife's making calls to offshore accounts, reported late one night. Liam's been meeting with criminal defense lawyers. They know something's coming, but they don't know what. Will closed his journal, a cold smile playing across his face. The setup was complete. His targets were isolated, fearful, and making fatal mistakes. Phase 2 could now begin. The tools were in place, the pressure points identified, and the weaknesses exposed. It was time to destroy them completely. Will Foster stood in his motel room command center, watching multiple surveillance feeds of Rosalie and Liam's crumbling world. Their once perfect life lay in ruins, though they hadn't yet realized it. The full extent of their destruction was becoming evident. Another investor pulled out this morning, Ray reported through the secure line. Rosalie spent 2 hours trying to manage the fallout, but with no luck. Will watched his ex-wife on the monitor, her composure slipping as she made frantic phone calls. Her designer clothes couldn't conceal the tension in her shoulders or the desperate edge in her gestures. Liam's not handling it well, continued. 3 meetings with criminal defense lawyers this week. He's starting to crack. The surveillance footage showed Liam pacing in his office, phone pressed to his ear, his construction company's reputation in tatters, contracts canceled, and regulators circling like vultures. Show me their home feeds, Will commanded. The screen shifted to their house, the one bought with his stolen life. Through hidden cameras, he watched their marriage fall apart in real time. You said you had this under control, Liam shouted, whiskey glass in hand. Now we're losing everything. Rosalie spun on him, her mask of perfection cracking. My sloppy construction deals are what's drawing attention? I told you to be careful with the permits. My deals? What about your creative accounting? Liam shot back. The regulators are asking questions about missing escrow funds. Will made notes in his journal as he observed them tear into each other. Samantha Chin's voice came through another secure line. The digital breadcrumbs are working, she reported. 3 different news outlets are investigating Rosalie's real estate practices. They're following the trail exactly as we planned. And Thomas Bennett? Will asked. He's running scared. Our leaks about his loan sharking operation have his criminal associates nervous. He's trying to distance himself from Rosalie and Liam. Will nodded, satisfaction coursing through him. Abigail, are you ready with the legal documentation? Abigail's new lawyer voice was crisp and professional. Everything's prepared. The hitman's confession is authenticated. The financial records are organized, and I've prepared injunctions against their assets. We can move whenever you give the word. Through the cameras, Will watched Rosalie and Liam's frantic attempts to save themselves. They held dinner parties, trying to maintain appearances, but their social circle was shrinking. Former friends stopped accepting invitations, and business associates found excuses not to meet. Your daughter called, mentioned. She says Liam's drinking more, getting angry. Should we be concerned? Increase surveillance on the house, Will ordered. If he becomes a threat to Carla, we move immediately. But Carla proved more than capable of handling herself. Through the cameras, Will observed his daughter navigate her home life, playing her role perfectly while gathering intelligence. Mom's been shredding documents, she reported during their secure calls. Liam caught her burning papers in the backyard at midnight. Good work, Will told her. Stay alert, but don't let them suspect anything. The pressure kept mounting. Anonymous tips led health inspectors to Liam's construction sites, and building permits were suddenly under review. Rosalie's real estate listings attracted scrutiny from regulatory boards. They're fighting about money, reported. Liam wants to liquidate assets and run to Mexico, but Rosalie refuses. She said she won't live like a fugitive. We'll watch their late-night argument through the surveillance feed. Will said. We could disappear, Liam pleaded, desperation in his voice. I have contacts. We could. I built this life, Rosalie snarled. I'm not running away like some criminal. We are criminals, Liam shouted. Everything's falling apart, and you're still in denial. Will's network of informants kept him updated on every move they made. Liam's visits to CD bars, meetings with questionable characters, and Rosalie's attempts to bribe officials to silence whistleblowers. They're making mistakes, Abigail noted during their strategy session. Desperate ones. Each attempt to save themselves only digs them deeper. Will reviewed the evidence his team had gathered. Bank records showing fraudulent transfers, documents proving the forged loan agreement, and recordings of Rosalie arranging the hit on his life, everything needed to completely destroy them. Your wife tried reaching out to Thomas Bennett again, Samantha reported. His people shut her down hard. They said he'd go to the authorities if she contacted him again. Through the surveillance feeds, we'll watch their isolation grow. Their phones rang less frequently. Social invitations went unanswered, and former friends avoided them, crossing the street to steer clear. Liam's getting paranoid, Ray noted. He's installed new security systems, hired private guards. He knows something's coming. He just doesn't know what. We'll watch them retreat into their expensive house. Their stolen paradise, now a prison. Rosalie's flawless appearance was starting to show cracks. Makeup couldn't hide the strain around her eyes. Liam's drinking increased, his temper shorter, and his movements more erratic. All the pieces are in place, Abigail confirmed. The evidence is solid, the witnesses are ready. Give the word, and we'll start the legal proceedings. Will reviewed his journal one last time, checking each phase of his plan. The trap was set perfectly. His enemies had nowhere to run, no one left to trust, not even each other. Leak the first batch of evidence to the media, he ordered. Let's show them what real betrayal feels like. The destruction of Rosalie and Liam's world began with a series of strikes, all coordinated by Will from his command center, orchestrating their downfall with cold precision. Release the financial records, he ordered Samantha, start with the fraudulent property deals. Within hours, 3 major news outlets ran stories about suspicious real estate transactions. Anonymous sources provided documentation showing systematic fraud, money laundering, and investor deception. Will watched Rosalie's reaction through the surveillance feeds. She sat in her home office, face pale, as she read the news reports. Her phone buzzed constantly, clients canceling contracts, partners distancing themselves, regulators demanding answers. Liam's not taking it well, reported. He tried contacting Thomas Bennett again and got shut down hard. The surveillance footage showed Liam's meltdown in his office as he swept everything off his desk, papers flying before he slumped into his chair with a bottle of whiskey. Your cybersecurity contact is ready, Samantha announced. We can access all of Rosalie's business servers whenever you give the word. Do it, Will ordered. Take everything. The digital assault was comprehensive. Company emails exposed systematic fraud, financial records revealed missing client funds, and internal documents proved deliberate code violations in Liam's construction projects. The media ran with the story. They're calling it the biggest real estate scandal in the city's history, Abigail reported. 3 more outlets picked up the story. Will watched his targets unravel through multiple camera feeds. Rosalie paced her office, making desperate phone calls to damage control, while Liam drank heavily, his construction empire crumbling around him. Time to release the hitman's confession, Will ordered. The recording hit the news like a bomb. The hitman's detailed account of Rosalie hiring him to kill Will, backed by phone recordings and financial transfers, sent shockwaves through the community. Police just reopened the investigation into your case, Abigail announced. They're reviewing everything: loan fraud, embezzlement, the murder attempt. Will observed as police cars pulled up to Rosalie's office. Through the cameras, he watched her being escorted out in handcuffs. Her perfect mascara streaked with tears. Liam's trying to run, Ray reported urgently. He's at the airport trying to book a flight to Mexico. No, Will replied coldly. He doesn't get to escape. One phone call to federal authorities ensured Liam never made it past security. Will watched through airport cameras as agents surrounded his former friend, taking him into custody. Thomas Bennett has been arrested, Samantha reported. The FBI raided his offices this morning. They found everything: loan sharking records, money laundering evidence, and connections to organized crime. The media coverage was relentless. News vans parked outside Rosalie and Liam's homes, and former friends and associates gave interviews distancing themselves from the scandal. Their carefully constructed social facade crumbled completely. Your daughter's safe, reconfirmed. She's staying with her aunt until this blows over. We'll watch the police raids through multiple feeds. Officers were seen boxing up documents from Rosalie's office, while federal agents seized computers from Liam's construction company. Their empire of lies collapsed, piece by piece. In the county jail, Liam broke first. Will watched through security cameras as his former friend confessed everything to investigators. The fraud, the conspiracy, the murder plot. He was trying to make a deal. Offering to testify against Rosalie in exchange for leniency, Abigail reported. No deals, Will ordered. Make sure the prosecutors have everything, the evidence, the connections. I want them buried. The preliminary hearing was a media circus. Will watched from the back of the courtroom as Rosalie and Liam were led in, wearing prison jumpsuits. Their eyes met his briefly, and he saw the moment they realized who had orchestrated their downfall. Please, Liam mouthed, reaching toward Will as guards led him past. I'm sorry, he said. Will turned away, his expression hard. Sorry meant nothing. Forgiveness wasn't in his vocabulary anymore. The evidence was overwhelming: bank records, witness testimony, digital forensics, a mountain of proof showing years of fraud and criminal conspiracy. The hitman's testimony about the murder plot sealed their fate. The prosecutors are offering 30 years, Abigail reported. No possibility of early release. Will nodded, satisfaction coursing through him as he watched his enemies crumble. Their expensive lawyers couldn't save them. Their social connections had abandoned them. They faced their fate alone, just as they had left him. Final phase, Will ordered his team. Release everything to the media. Show the world exactly who they really are. The complete story hit the news: the betrayal, the frame-up, the murder plot. Will's name was cleared completely. Public opinion swung hard, condemning Rosalie and Liam while hailing Will as a victim of terrible injustice. The courtroom fell silent as Judge Harrison prepared to deliver the sentence. Will sat in the gallery, watching his former wife and best friend standing before the bench in Prison Orange. The crimes committed by the defendants show a level of calculated cruelty that this court rarely sees, the judge declared. The systematic fraud, the false imprisonment of an innocent man, and the attempted murder plot demonstrate a complete disregard for human dignity. Will observed as Rosalie's perfect posture finally broke. Liam swayed slightly, his face ashen. Therefore, this court sentences each defendant to 35 years in federal prison. Additionally, all assets gained through criminal activity will be seized and restituted to their victims. The gavel's bang echoed through the courtroom. Will watched without expression as guards led Rosalie and Liam away. Their eyes sought his one final time. Rosalie's face was filled with desperate pleas, while Liam's bore the weight of broken resignation. Will turned away from them both. Their fate was sealed, their destruction complete. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed around him. Mr. Foster, how does it feel to be exonerated? The truth always comes out, Will replied simply. Justice has been served. Abigail met him at her office afterward to handle the paperwork. The restitution orders are being processed. You'll receive full compensation for all financial damages. The money doesn't matter, Will said. Making them pay is what matters. His lawyer studied him carefully. They'll never recover from this. Their reputations are ruined, their assets seized, their freedom gone. Was it worth it? Will's face remained impassive. They tried to destroy me, tried to take my life, my freedom, my daughter. There's no forgiveness for that. Later, he met Carla at a small cafe away from the media's reach. His daughter had grown stronger through the ordeal, her innocence replaced by hard-won wisdom. What happens now, Dad? We start over, Will replied. Somewhere new. Away from all this. Carla nodded, understanding in her eyes. Mom tried to call me from jail. I didn't answer. Good. She made her choice. She has to live with it. Will had already arranged their fresh start, a house in a different city, new opportunities, a clean slate. The betrayal had changed him, transformed him from a trusting teacher into someone harder, someone who understood the true face of human nature. His network of contacts gradually dispersed, their roles in his revenge completed. Each received their promised payment, their connections severed cleanly. One last thing, reported during their final meeting. Liam tried to send you a letter from prison. Want me to get rid of it? Burn it, Will ordered. The past is dead. He sold the house he had once shared with Rosalie, erasing all traces of his old life. The gentle professor who had trusted too easily was gone, replaced by someone stronger, more ruthless, more aware of humanity's capacity for betrayal. The local media portrayed him as a victim who had triumphed over injustice. We'll let them tell that story, he thought. It served his purposes. But the truth, he knew, was darker, more complex. He had become what circumstances demanded, a man capable of destroying his enemies completely, without mercy or hesitation. The final piece of evidence, his revenge journal, he burned, page by page. Its purpose was fulfilled, its detailed plans executed perfectly. What remained was a new future, unmarked by past shadows. As Will and Carla prepared to leave town, he took one last look at the city that had witnessed his transformation. The betrayal had broken the man he was, but from those shattered pieces, someone stronger had emerged, someone who would never be vulnerable again. Ready? Carla asked, understanding in her eyes. Will nodded, turning away from the past. He had not just survived, he had triumphed. His enemies were destroyed, his name cleared, and his daughter safe by his side. The cost had been his old self, his capacity for trust, his belief in human goodness, a fair trade. He decided, for the power to protect what mattered and punish those who deserved it. The old Will Foster was truly gone. In his place stood someone new, someone forged in betrayal's fire, tempered by revenge, and ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. He had become the master of his own fate, and he would never be betrayed again. 10 years later, Will Foster stood at the window of his corner office in Boston, watching the city bustle below. At 52, his hair had touches of gray at the temples, but his physique remained strong, maintained by the same disciplined routine he had developed during his time in prison. 5 years ago, the prestigious Williams College History Department had eagerly sought to hire him. His published works on historical revenge societies had earned him a reputation as a leading expert in the field. On his desk, a newspaper clipping from his old hometown sat, showing that Rosalie Lawrence Foster, now simply Rosalie Lawrence, had been denied parole for the third time. The board had cited her continued lack of remorse as the primary reason. 25 years remained on her sentence. Will's phone buzzed. A text from Carla. Dad, remember Julia's graduation is next weekend. Samantha says you better not miss your granddaughter walking. A small smile crossed his face. Carla, now 26, had built a successful life in Seattle. Her cybersecurity firm, partially built from skills learned from Samantha Chin, specialized in protecting small businesses from fraud. She had married a software developer named Michael Ross, and their daughter Julia had become the light of Will's life. The lessons of betrayal hadn't been lost on Carla. She had grown into a formidable woman, careful with trust, but fiercely protective of those who earned it. She never spoke of Rosalie and had never visited her in prison. As far as Carla was concerned, her mother had died the day Will was arrested. Will's desk phone buzzed. Dr. Foster, Ray Lynch is here to see you. Send him in. Ray had aged well. His private investigation business had thrived after Will's case earned him a reputation. He still did occasional work for Will, keeping tabs on various players from their shared past. Liam died last night, Ray announced without preamble. Prison heart attack, apparently. He'd been declining for months. Will absorbed the news without visible reaction. Liam had received a 35-year sentence, but had served only 10. Death had granted him an early release. Any last messages? Will asked, though he already knew the answer. Same as always. He tried writing you again last month, still begging for forgiveness. Will turned back to the window. Liam had written regularly during the first few years, each letter filled with apologies and explanations. Each one had been returned unopened or burned unread. Will's capacity for forgiveness had died in that prison cell a decade ago. What about Thomas Bennett? Still in witness protection after rolling over on his criminal network. He couldn't survive on the outside. Lives in Arizona under a new name, working as a car salesman, if you can believe it. Will nodded. Bennett had cut a deal, trading information for a reduced sentence. He'd served 5 years and emerged to find his criminal empire dismantled, his connections gone. Will had made sure of that. And our old team? Ray settled into a chair, pulling out his tablet. Samantha Chin's running her own cybersecurity consulting firm in Singapore. Very successful, very legitimate. She still sends Christmas cards. Will glanced at the digital photo frame on his desk. Samantha had attended Carla's wedding 3 years ago, one of the few connections from that time he had maintained. Mike Chin got out last year, Ray continued. His sister set him up with a job at her company. He's staying clean, doing computer system audits for banks. The forger, Matthew Reyes? Will asked. Gone legitimate, too. Does art restoration in Chicago. He's got a gallery showing next month. Will absorbed the information with a nod. The network he had built for his revenge had scattered across the globe, most of them transitioning to legal enterprises. He kept loose tabs on them through Ray, ensuring none of them would ever pose a threat. Abigail's firm is handling Julia's trust fund paperwork, Will mentioned. She's made partner now. Abigail Escobar had turned her role in exposing the corruption into a successful legal career. She specialized in defending wrongly accused clients, utilizing many of the techniques they had developed during Will's revenge. Patty Lopez retired last year, Ray added. Still feels guilty about not seeing through Rosalie's scheme. Will's first lawyer had sent him a long letter after the truth came out, apologizing for her failure to prevent his conviction. Will had responded briefly, acknowledging that Rosalie and Liam's deception had fooled many, but he never hired her again. The door opened, and Will's teaching assistant entered with a stack of papers. "Dr. Foster, your lectures for next semester's course on historical justice systems need review." "Thank you, David," Will said, taking the papers. He noticed the top page, Revenge as Restoration, Historical Perspectives on Personal Justice. After Ray left, Will reviewed his upcoming lectures. His academic focus on historical revenge practices had earned him international recognition. Universities frequently invited him to speak about justice systems throughout history, never realizing they were hosting the man who had orchestrated one of the most complete acts of personal revenge in recent memory. His phone buzzed again, a text from Carla. "Dad, Julie is asking about her middle name again. Should I tell her the story?" Will paused. Julia's middle name was Rachel, after Ray's sister, who had died during the revenge operation in a random car accident unrelated to their plans. But it had solidified Ray's commitment to punishing those who preyed on others. The name served as a reminder that, no matter how justified, revenge carried unexpected costs. Later that evening, Will drove home to the Burkers, a modernist glass and steel structure that bore no resemblance to his old life. His housekeeper Maria had left dinner in the warmer. She worked for him 3 days a week, thoroughly vetted by Ray's agency, just like everyone who entered Will's life now. As he ate, Will reviewed the latest intelligence report from Ray's firm. Rosalie's prison communications were still being monitored, though she had mostly given up trying to contact the outside world. Her last visitor had been 3 years ago, a true crime writer researching a book about the case. Will had ensured the author received all the documented evidence, guaranteeing the book would portray the events accurately. His home office contained a hidden safe, inside which were copies of all the evidence that had destroyed Rosalie and Liam. Digital backups existed in multiple secure locations. Will had learned never to discard leverage, no matter how complete the victory seemed. The next morning, he taught his graduate seminar on historical power structures. His students, eager young minds pursuing their doctorates, debated the role of personal justice in societies with corrupt legal systems. Will guided the discussion dispassionately, never revealing his personal connection to the subject. During lunch, he spoke with Julia via video chat. His granddaughter, barely 5, showed him her latest artwork, a family portrait that included only her parents, herself, and Grandpa Will. She had no knowledge of her other grandmother, and Will intended to keep it that way as long as possible. "When are you coming to visit?" Julia asked, her face filling the screen. "Next weekend for your graduation," Will reminded her. "I've got your present already picked out." After the call, Will received an encrypted email from Samantha Chun. Her routine security sweeps had flagged some troubling chatter. Former associates of Thomas Bennett were asking questions about Will's past. Although Bennett himself remained submissive, others from his old organization occasionally probed for vulnerabilities. Will forwarded the information to Ray with a single instruction: handle it. He had learned never to take chances with potential threats. The network he'd built for revenge now served to protect what he had rebuilt. Any sign of danger was eliminated swiftly, efficiently, and completely. That evening, Will attended a faculty dinner where the conversation shifted to a recent case of corporate whistleblowing. His colleagues debated the ethics of exposing corruption versus maintaining loyalty. Will contributed occasionally, offering historical perspectives while keeping his personal insights hidden. But one professor argued, revenge serves no constructive purpose in a civilized society. Will took a sip of wine, thinking of Rosalie in her prison cell, Liam's fatal heart attack, and Thomas Bennett living in fear under an assumed name. "Revenge," he replied carefully, "is neither constructive nor destructive. It simply is like gravity. It exists whether we approve of it or not. The real question is how it shapes both the avenger and the target." Later that night, Will received his weekly report from the prison systems database. Rosalie had attempted to send another letter, this one addressed to Julia. Like all her previous attempts to contact her granddaughter, it would be intercepted before reaching its destination. Will's phone lit up with a text from Carla. "Got the quarterly trust fund statement. Pretty aggressive investment strategy, Dad." Will smiled faintly. The trust fund for Julia, now worth several $1,000,000, had been built partially from the seized assets of Rosalie and Liam's criminal empire. A fitting use for their ill-gotten gains, Will thought. The next morning, he met with his department chair to discuss the upcoming publication of his latest book, Justice Outside the Law, Historical Perspectives on Personal Vengeance. The publisher had already ordered a substantial first printing, expecting strong academic and popular interest. "Your personal experience with wrongful conviction adds such authenticity to your work," the chair remarked. Will nodded in acknowledgement, keeping the depth of that authenticity to himself. His academic career had become the perfect cover. Who would suspect a respected historian of having orchestrated one of the most complete acts of personal revenge in recent memory? That afternoon, he received an update from Abigail regarding some minor legal matters. She had become one of the few people from that time he still trusted. Her commitment to justice aligned with his own transformed worldview. The last appeal was denied, she reported. Rosalie's conviction stands, with no possibility of review. Will thanked her briefly before turning his attention to preparing for his upcoming trip to Seattle. Julia's preschool graduation was a small event in the grand scheme, but Will had learned to value these moments of normal family life. His revenge had cost him his old self, his ability to trust easily, and his belief in simple justice. But it had given him something else, a cold clarity about human nature, an appreciation for power carefully wielded, and most importantly, the ability to protect what mattered to him. As Will packed for Seattle, he reflected on the decades since his revenge had come to fruition. He had rebuilt his life on his own terms, achieving success in ways his former self could never have imagined. His academic career provided both cover and fulfillment, while his relationship with Carla had grown stronger, built on a shared understanding of betrayal's lessons. Julia represented a future untouched by the shadows of the past. The betrayal had transformed him from a trusting scholar into someone harder, colder, and more capable. That transformation had exacted its toll, but it had also granted him power he had never dreamed of possessing. His network, though mostly inactive, remained ready to be mobilized at the first sign of danger to his new life. Will Foster, once a gentle history professor, had become a living embodiment of historical revenge fulfilled. His enemies were either destroyed or dead, his name was cleared and respected, and his family was safe. The price had been his former self, but he considered it a fair trade for the power to ensure that such betrayal would never harm him or his loved ones again. The man who had emerged from the crucible of betrayal and vengeance stood stronger, more resolute, and absolutely certain of his path forward. He had become the master of his own fate, and he intended to keep it that way. As night fell over the Burker, Will stood at his window, gazing at the lights of the city below. Somewhere in a federal prison, Rosalie Lawrence sat in her cell, her dreams of wealth and status reduced to concrete walls and steel bars. Liam's body lay in the prison morgue, his betrayal ending not with redemption, but with a lonely death. Thomas Bennett lived his borrowed life in Arizona, constantly on edge, fearful of what might come next. Will's phone buzzed one last time, a text from Carla with a photo of Julia trying on her graduation outfit. The image brought a rare, genuine smile to his face. This was what he had fought for, what his revenge had ultimately protected. The chance for a new generation to grow up free from the poison of betrayal. The gentle professor had died in that prison cell a decade ago. The man who emerged harder, colder, unforgiving had built something stronger from the ashes of betrayal. He had become someone who could not be betrayed, could not be broken, and could not be defeated. And he would keep it that way, no matter the cost. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.